Okay, so this, I want to welcome everybody to the, I believe this is the sixth meeting, working group meeting, might be the seventh with the kickoff meeting. So welcome to the seventh meeting. We're gonna discuss the capacity shortfall penalty. We're gonna wrap that up with some discussion, and then we're gonna get into the penalty enforcement mechanism a little bit as well. We're gonna have some time for the discussion. And I'm joined today from the CDC, as usual, by Daniel Hildenau and Eric Lyon. I'm sorry, I'm not sure which one it is, but
Either way, but most people say Lion.
Lyon, okay. All right, so not like the French city. Usually start these meetings by letting you know that the presentations will be uploaded on the DR workshop, onto the DR workshop website. I do realize right now we have a bit of an issue with access to the comments and presentation files. If you need something, you can email me. I can send it to you until we can get that resolved, but I will be working diligently to get that better access on that. The recordings of the meetings should be up there. Fine, those are on YouTube. So that is not as much of a problem. But this meeting will be recorded and put up there, and hopefully we'll get the comments and the presentation up there as well. I will be sending the presentation out after the meeting for everybody to have. You're all muted upon entry, but when you're want to speak, you can raise your hand. We're not. There may be times when more of a free form, but generally mute yourself when you've been recognized, and we will call on you. So we want you to be comfortable and safe in your surroundings. Know where your emergency exits are. Of course, now most of you, I won't say, I'm thinking most of you work from home now, so hopefully you know how to get out of your own home. But also, if you're in the office somewhere, know how to get out of there. Get out of there. Make sure you're comfortable. It's a 2-hour meeting, and we always say, if you're experiencing an emergency, call 911, and or you can attempt to get help through the chat, but we would recommend the 911 option primarily. And refrain from discussing any other proceedings in case there's commissioners on here to avoid any inadvertent ex partes. I don't believe there will be any commissioners on here. There have not been, but it's always good advice for any meeting involving the CPUC. So as I mentioned before, this is our seventh. This is our sixth in these actual discussions, and then the seventh if you include the kickoff. So we will be discussing the CSP and introducing the PEM. Then we'll have 2 more meetings to finalize the PEM and then discuss the study plan and what any other issues that need discussing before working into the testing phase of this process. Today's agenda, we will do some logistics introduction to logistics and scheduling, which is what's going on right now. Daniel, I believe, will be reviewing the shortfall penalty comments. We'll take a break, and then I will probably be the one talking about the penalty enforcement mechanism, and then we'll have some next steps and process questions. And during sections 2 and 3, we'll also have short time for discussions as well. Before we get started, are there any questions at the moment? Seeing none, we will move on to the review of shortfall penalties. Daniel, I'll turn it over to you, and just let me know.
Yeah, great. I think we can move on straight away. Just wanted to start with just a reminder of, I guess, what we were focused on at the end of the last meeting. Obviously, we were working on the formula for this penalty, for the capacity shortfall penalty. I think the primary takeaways we as staff had was that there were these 3 key points, and we asked stakeholders to respond to them, or at least focus on them. And just as a reminder, what those 3 points were was whether or not we would want to have a penalty cap. That was sort of expressed as a zero revenue, or another way of saying that is saying we would not penalize beyond the value of the committed capacity that a DRP or IOU was already on the hook for. That there would not be out of pocket penalties. That was the proposal around a penalty cap. The second point was a buffer or a threshold. The idea behind this was that there was uncertainty, that there is uncertainty in the measurement of demand response. And so a buffer or threshold would be just a percentage of that committed capacity that would not be penalized. So in the original CEC proposal, that was a 94.5% threshold, which a penalty would not occur on the performance for DRP or IOU. But there were other numbers as well, and that were proposed in the last working group meeting. And there were other ways of dealing with this. And then finally, sort of on a similar vein, the final point of adjusting for overperformance. So again, sort of on this point of there's uncertainty in demand response measurement. There are instances in which a demand response resource does not have a shortfall, but it rather exceeds the committed capacity. And so we asked folks to think about how we wanted to deal with that case as well. So I think we can go on to the next slide, and the next slide is really just to serve as a point of reference for these are the comments that we received from 3 different parties. I want to call out that there was generally consensus around the penalty cap. The performance buffer and overperformance adjustment were a little bit there was a little bit more nuance going on there. But again, I think we will share out those comments if we haven't already. But this is sort of a summary table of what we as staff were looking at after the last working group meeting. So from there, I think we can just kind of go on to the consensus that staff made, or the determination that staff made on these key points. And I think we'll probably pause here for a moment and field questions on this as well. But just briefly before we do that, I'm going to step through and just say on each of these points, we agreed with the penalty cap. I think came to the same consensus that most people did in the previous working group meeting, which was that a penalty of 0 revenue would be sufficient to incentivize sort of a accurate assessment in the capability profile or the time temperature matrix. And it would also probably simplify some of the points that we'll talk about today in the penalty enforcement mechanism. The not having the out-of-pocket penalty, obviously, we'll get into that, but that was also something we were considering when we were making that determination. On the performance threshold, we, I think, thought about this a little bit harder in the context of this whole process, and came to the conclusion that if we are accounting for uncertainty in demand response measurement, we should be doing that not in the penalty formula, but rather in the performance metric evaluation. So this runs a little counter to, again, some of the comments that we had received, but the rationale here is that the penalty formula is probably not the appropriate place to be doing uncertainty thresholds. And we'll hopefully have, I think, a clearer characterization of this performance metric evaluation, and we can, I think, look to that as a place to incorporate some threshold. Then I think parties commented on this as well, that this has to strike a balance between the performance evaluation and the penalty enforcement. And so we're coming to the same conclusion, and we're just suggesting that we should be doing the uncertainty accounting in the performance evaluation as opposed to the penalty assessment. And then finally, on the adjustment for overperformance, this is a similar rationale in that we think that there is probably better places to be doing that adjustment than resource adequacy. The determination that staff came to was that there should not be an adjustment. And if there is not a shortfall in capacity between the demonstrated capacity or the evaluated capacity and the committed capacity, then the committed capacity request would be rewarded. Again, the idea here is that resource adequacy is probably not the appropriate place to be dealing with the overperformance. So we can pause here. Yeah, I see Eric maybe wants to chime in on this point as well. Give a little more color.
Thanks, Daniel. Yeah, I was just going to echo exactly what you were saying. But it's not that we don't think it's a good idea to incentivize overperformance. I think we just sort of came to the realization that, if it's through the RA construct, it means, a load serving entity probably has to pay for that. But they already purchased, all the capacity that they need elsewhere. So this would be in effect sort of requiring them to buy a little extra RA capacity after the fact. But again, we recognize that we want to be encouraging DR, to go above and beyond and grow. And in fact, that is very much the sort of program design philosophy behind demand side grid support, the sort of incremental capacity option 2. And I know that a program that's here now is maybe not a long-term, something that folks want to count on as part of their sort of business model. But I do want to just use that to illustrate that we're aware of this. We want to keep incentivizing this. But again, we just think it ties the RA market up in some weird knots if we try to require payment for overperformance. That's it for me. Thanks.
I see hands from Luke and Josh. Maybe I don't know which one went up first, but
I think mine went up earlier. I think it was there before Eric actually. But thank you for the summary. It's a reasonable kind of thought process, because realistically you're dealing with the capacity market. I am kind of curious if you guys have thought about how the performance metric would adjust to account for uncertainty in measurement. Because you guys kind of have that as a kind of say move it from the capacity shortfall determination to the performance metric. I'm wondering what thinking you guys have behind that. Because one way to think about it is that DR will never get 100%, right, over many years because it's capped in one side. So you're basically penalizing DR, perhaps rightfully so, for the fact that it's not certain. Right, so that's one way to look at it. But I was kind of curious if you guys actually formulating any thinking about how you would account for in the performance metric for that uncertainty.
I think another way that some people formulated this in comments is about how sort of strict or stringent is the penalty mechanism versus how strict or stringent is the measurement mechanism, right? And for example, in our proposal with bit normalized impacts, there's a lot of areas in which you get sort of quote unquote, benefit of the doubt. We're giving you credit for more than you actually did, assuming a partial dispatch or something. So I think that's one of the things that we have in mind here is it's like where are we giving you benefit of the doubt versus where are we saying like nope, this is a strict sort of cutoff.
But Eric, what you're describing there is more like you're applying symmetry in the BNLI, right? You're basically saying I'm going to take errors up and down. They're going to offset each other. It's not biased in one direction or the other. When you start looking at the process where you kind of say, we're going to say, look, you're not going to give you full credit for this. You can only go down, you can't go up, right? And there's noise in the results. So unless there's an actual way to adapt in a performance vector, which I'm not really seeing that in terms of that hasn't been formulated. To me, it's pretty much the outcome is, look, if you're a DR, you can't get 100% performance, right? Because over multiple years, because you basically have asymmetric values on one side versus the other. And that might be the outcome that's desired, right? Because that would essentially be reflecting the fact that you're not a 100% sure resource. But I want to be kind of explicit about that in the high level, right? Because as soon as you introduce asymmetry, you have a bit of an underpayment that's going to happen automatically. Asymmetry always creates that. And that might be okay if that's the intention, because the asymmetry is caused by uncertainty in the measurement.
Right. Yeah. And so your point is that there would never be overpayment. There might be underpayment. There might be full payment, but never over.
Correct. And there's going to be underpayment. There's going to be a handful of cases, the exact payment or risk, but there's never going to be over. So it's asymmetric. You're dealing with noise in an asymmetric way, which essentially means you're going to come up with a lower value. And that might be the intention, right? Because it is not 100% sure thing, but that's something that if it's being adopted, we just need to be very conscious about it.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think that was sort of the intention, but one way that might solve some of these issues, I wonder if we could you do something sort of like what the RAIM does now, and that it's more like revenue neutral, or maybe some portion of it would be a transfer from underperformers to overperformers. Of course, there's no guarantee how much money would be available in that pot. So, you might not get good compensation for your overperformance. But that might be some way to, or one way to try to make that a little bit more symmetrical.
Yeah, or it could be like some type of banking mechanism. If you overperformed last year, therefore you get some credits for the next year, right? But I haven't thought that through all the way. But like what I do see here is we do have asymmetry, and asymmetry is going to lead to a case where no one's ever going to get 100%, over multiple years, unless they're vastly over delivering.
Right.
Let me just point out that the force threshold. So first is there's also the intersection at the zero revenue, and so I'm not saying this is the answer, but you can make it less severe than maybe what we've been discussing, maybe at 25%, and therefore, even though you have some, even though it's kind of asymmetrical, the penalty doesn't really hit you until you start really underperforming. Whereas maybe now at 50%, it really starts to cut in earlier. So I'm just saying, I'm not suggesting that's what you would do. I'm just saying that there's other areas to kind of like mitigate maybe the asymmetry of the that you were concerned about.
Yeah, but it basically means, because I think right now people have been kind of responding to a package of, here's the lambda value that I picked or the multiplier, right? and here's these other components. So, but there's negotiation there, as you pointed out, right, where you can kind of sit there and say, make that slope a little less, severe would be one way to do it. That will probably help out a bit. All right, just appreciate the feedback. Thanks.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think what we're hoping for also is, I think in the process of, I think having this whole process outlined from start to finish, that we'll be able to, I think, better identify where some, I don't know, with either method in the performance evaluation, whether there are levers that we can make more or less stringent as we are sort of creating the inputs for this penalty. But I hear what you're saying. I think right now it also is, well, the status quo right now, I think also includes a lot of, it's a steep climb to get 100% performance. And I think hopefully the penalties that we're suggesting would not disincentivize participation. I think we're happy to work that out as conversations continue. Let's see, the hand went back up, but I also want to give Luke
this one
opportunity
I
to
was
quickly.
going to compliment Luke's comment, so maybe this is going to go on board with him. I didn't realize he was there still, but one in between position is what Luke put together, right? It's like it doesn't have an adjustment for overperformance, but it has a buffer zone as part of it, right? So like if you had the buffer zone in a symmetric, then you're potentially paying for overperformance. But I think having a bit of a buffer zone in there, if you're going to go with the no overperformance, makes a lot of sense. Now, I would encourage people to consider the buffer zone, because you're still going to be penalized for noise, right? But it will not be times a multiplier over the buffer zone. So if my results because of noise and measurement comes back to 95%, rather than having paid 90%, you get paid 95% over the buffer zone. It's not as if it has no effect. It just doesn't double the effect. Because with the multiplier or the lambda dropping directly, and this is not my proposal, this is Luke's iteration of my proposal, right? Because I built on Eric's proposal, Luke built on my proposal, and we've been iterating back and forth since. But that's essentially a nice, interesting position, because it does allow for noise in one direction, doesn't over penalize you for noise. Because if you directly drop the multiplier from 100% forward, then you're over penalizing for what is basically noise, in addition to making it asymmetric.
Luke, do you want to comment on that as well?
Yes, please. First of all, I agree with all of Josh's points on there, and thanks, Josh, for bringing those up. I think Daniel, like you were saying, I think it'll be helpful, to see how this is all going to play out from, end to end. That might give us a little bit more peace of mind. But with that said, though, I still think that some sort of buffer would be appropriate. But I do want to point out, what PG&E submitted in their comments, as I understood it, and I invite PG&E folks on the line to correct me if I'm misinterpreting what you had proposed, is that I continue to believe that paying extra beyond 100% for overperformance is problematic for a lot of reasons. But I think what PG proposed to use overperformance to not in order to get greater than 100% compensation, but to be able to offset, maybe underperformance, in another, time frame or something like that. And obviously this depends if, what we're looking at, if we're looking at, quarterly or monthly or whatever. But, by allowing overperformance to offset underperformance in a different increment of time, that's another way to do it. So, and again, that's my interpretation of what PG&E did, and that might be a way to address that lack of, sorry, I'm blanking on the word already, that lack of balance, between underperformance and overperformance. Because I agree with Josh. The way what's being proposed now is a guarantee that utilities and DRPs are going to end up paying a penalty, just for and I really like what you said, Josh. Simply due to kind of noise and not necessarily because they underperformed. So anyhow, that's what we just want to put that out there for thought. Thank you.
Yep. So long.
Yeah, I guess I think we can. I think we'll take these into account, and I think this is a pretty reasonable point to get to. But yeah, I guess we'll come back on this a little bit later on. But for now, if are there any other comments on sort of this adjustment for overperformance, sort of separate from this threshold? I think they're related, but anything specific to that? I'm realizing I can't see hands.
Yeah.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, there you go.
Want to respond to feedback. I think Luke's characterization is correct. PG&E is suggesting a symmetric buffer. The intent is not to encourage overcompensation, not to encourage delivery beyond 100% of the QC, because excess capacity cannot be used for resource planning in the plants. But we have a symmetric buffer to account for the inaccuracy in the QC value is the statistics. So it comes with some level of noise. So having a symmetric buffer, hopefully we can land on 100%, the midpoint, rather than just having a one-sided buffer, in which case we may always end up with under-delivering less than 100% of the QC. That's the whole intent of PG&E's proposal on a symmetric buffer.
To Luke, we have you wanted to respond?
Thanks, Gil, for that. One other point I wanted to make and I want to be sensitive to the ISO's concerns about this particular issue as well. And I think the benefit of doing it the way PG&E is proposing, in this element, but by having a symmetric buffer, is that though I know the ISO is concerned about, DR providers overperforming, but because there's no profit necessarily, direct profit, motivation behind that. In other words, trying to qualify for a payment that's higher than their contracted capacity payment, then it wouldn't be my expectation that a DR provider would be consistently going out and seeking to over deliver necessarily, on their requirements, but it might simply provide a mechanism for them to put in a little bit of a fudge factor, which, I'm not a DR provider, but I would imagine that, everyone does that to a certain degree. And, but, in allowing that to count, in order to make sure that they're getting credit for that little fudge factor. And again, allowing them to avoid, penalties.
Eric, were you looking to respond to Eric Lagerquist? You were looking to respond to that? Looks like you might have unmuted.
No, I don't have any specific response at this point. I guess I note that in the context of the penalty, capacity penalty mechanism, that's kind of one step removed from the market performance. So it's possible you would overperform on the capacity penalty while still, meeting your bids and dispatch, or meeting your dispatches exactly in the CAISO market. So they're kind of slightly different issues in terms of overperformance compared to dispatch and overperformance compared to your capacity contract. But yeah, as our comments stated, I think we also didn't see a need to compensate overperformance in the capacity space either. Thanks.
Daniel, you had another slide you wanted to go over?
Yeah, I guess it's been a fruitful discussion. I wanted to sort of finish by just kind of calling out that I don't know, it's not extremely relevant to the conversation we're having right now, but I think in contextualizing this and hopefully getting to a point where we have this from start to finish and maybe approaching sort of some anxiety relief on how all of this actually works together, I want to just re-emphasize that on the specific values that we're talking about. So even with this threshold, I think the workbook that Josh put together that sort of we've all been using or looking at from last meeting, I just want to sort of recontextualize that we're going to probably be playing with these numbers with different specific values. On the point of a threshold, the idea of eliminating it also was sort of to make this process a little bit more straightforward and sort of reduce the number of variables that we were going to sort of parameterize. But all the same, I think we can still do that. I'm now thinking to myself about what specific value would make sense for that threshold if it were symmetric, if it weren't there. But the point that I wanted to just sort of remind everybody about on this slide was that we are planning to do this with a range of values to try to find the ones that I think address these issues best, and also call out as sort of has been mentioned that we have a scaler that we can play with to change the severity of this. And I think it was mentioned earlier that maybe this whole penalty is phased in. I just want to sort of reiterate some of those things now. But that pretty much completes the discussion I was planning to have on this point. At this point, I think what staff is going to try to do is, again, create sort of the complete workbook for start to finish with sort of a sample of the sort of relevant dispatch bid kind of dummy data, and have that feed in through the different methods for assessing performance and having those output the inputs for the capacity shortfall penalty. And my hope is that helps everyone understand sort of what we're proposing here. But at this point, we have kind of the core components of how this process is going to work outlined and discussed. And I think sort of just coming back with the actual, nuts and bolts, what this looks like is going to be the priority for staff. But it's all just a disclaimer. The next topic of discussion is probably not going to affect how numbers are produced. So yeah, just calling out here that we are now, I think, shifting gears and trying to create something that will be similarly useful for folks. You heard the feedback on the capacity shortfall tool, and I think we're seeking to do that for the whole process. So yeah, I think we're a little bit early. Yes, we will certainly be circulating this workbook. I think realistically, we'll hopefully be doing this before before we finish this section of sort of working group meetings, sort of by aiming for November. And yeah, as Josh is saying as well, I think, yeah, we are of course looking to emphasize sort of that there have been a lot of points that I think are more concrete that have been made. And I think we can sort of adjust all of our proposals accordingly. So there's not I think a date that we have defined yet internally as to when we're trying to circulate that, but I just wanted to call out that is coming and hopefully will be useful for everybody. But any event, so if there are questions on this, I think happy to field more of them, but yeah, I have to double check on the hands because it doesn't pop up, but assuming there aren't any, I don't know, I know we were planning to take a break before talking about the enforcement mechanism.
Well, I was thinking that maybe we just go into the enforcement mechanism. And then depending on where we land after that, we might take a break, or maybe we can, this might not be a 2-hour meeting necessarily. As these two topics today are not nearly as complex, I don't know if that's the right word, but as the initial BNLI discussion. So
yeah, that sounds good to me.
Mm.
If you
Okay.
pass it back over to you to
right.
over.
All right, so yeah, so we're not gonna do the 5-minute break. So if you remember at the beginning of this process, we identified 3 items to be discussed. And we discussed the BNLI formula, the capacity shortfall penalty. And now, so the next question was, how do we enforce this mechanism exactly? How do we know what is the penalty enforcement mechanism? So this was what we put up in terms of at the beginning was how to administer, what is the definition of the enforcement mechanism, and noted some challenges: lack of visibility in the contract prices, no direct authority over DRPs, and potential need for collateral payments. And it was mentioned which state agencies would have a role in this penalty enforcement mechanism. So in the original CEC proposal, they recommended that Cal ISO should implement the proposed penalty mechanism. Seeing as how the Cal ISO has jurisdiction over all relevant DR resources, I'm going to get into this a little bit in a second. Although the CPUC should administer for DRAM resources and utility DR programs, if the Cal ISO cannot do so by 2025. So that was, and maybe Daniel or Eric, but that was probably about the extent of the discussion of penalty enforcement mechanism in the prior discussions of this. I see Daniel shaking his head yes, or nodding his head yes. So, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the penalty enforcement mechanism, and there's a couple primary questions. And one of the major ones is actually who would be enforcing the mechanism, the whole process, and determine. So who would be analyzing the data, who would be coming up with the penalty and then enforcing the penalty. And ideally, a mature, well-established protocol could ideally be with the Cal ISO. The rules are nice and defined, and it's easy for them. I mean, there's not going to be any kind of like examination, not as much examination about what the process, but more like they could go in there. And the reason for this is because they can look at the DRPs individually, so that might be a possibility. They also have some, they can technically hold back revenue because they're the ones who can pay some of that out. Although penalties beyond holding back revenue, we're not sure if it's feasible at the Cal ISO level. And so I think, I guess the bottom line or the thing key here is that at the Cal ISO would be like the ideal at the end of a process, but as we're still developing, and then maybe as we either ramp in the process or the incentive-based QC, as we ramp it in maybe over a few years, maybe we figure out some things work better than others. It's probably still best at the CPUC. area, who's also, you know, with the RA, area. And so that would bring up the question, then who's responsible for the penalties? And if it's at the CPUC, then it really only has to be with the LSEs. We don't have the ability to really go after third-party DRPs, if you will. They, you know, they're not the ones who are being the RA, meeting the RA requirements. And so what would have to happen is the LSEs would have to have agreed upon contract terms with their DRPs to pass through penalties if they wish, or to have some other mechanism by which that is recovered. And so, you know, typically the CPUC, just like deficiency penalties or anything else in RA, will go through the process, a penalty process, that way, and then it would be up to the CPUC to examine the data, obviously, that we would get from the CalISO. And the CEC might be involved. I mean, again, the CEC might, using their technical expertise, might also be involved in part of that, but the penalty enforcement would be the CPUC. And then later down the line, see if there isn't a way for improvement that it can be at the CalISO or something, you know. And but right now, we would not recommend going to the CalISO or trying to have the CalISO administer this. So, you know, PEM was not part of the previous working group process, more or less. And, you know, this is kind of this is kind of something newer for us to examine. So, you know, I think what's going to be very valuable here are comments from parties on feasibility and roadblock issues, and just whether you have your own proposal for PEMs. It's just, I think this is, well, let me just go third bullet here. And we do have more time on this. This is not, how it is enforced is not going to be part of the evaluation process during the December, April period when we are looking at the BNLI and CSP. It's not going to be affected, or because we're not going to be actually putting out penalties or anything to that, issuing penalties, if you will. So I think what so the key point that we come up with is basically that we feel like it initially should stay with the CPUC, and it's going to have to, and if that's the case, then it's going to have to go through the LSEs. So that means knowing that there's contracts, terms already in effect, and we don't know, I can't speak to those specifically right now. There may be language already in contracts. There may not be language that may need to be added or agreed to going forward. These are all the kind of things that would have to be considered. That may also be why it gets phased in, so that people can adjust to this kind of requirement. So that's, you know, really, that's really all we have on the performance enhancement mechanism. I'm sorry, or penalty enforcement mechanism. You know, I think, as we say, we have more time on this, ideally, so we can really come back to this as we need to be for the next little bit. And again, I don't know how much thought many of the parties have put into this already, but it's certainly something that we are hoping to get good input from the stakeholders here on this. I don't know, first of all, Daniel or Eric, do you have anything you want to add before Eric, mine?
Yeah, sorry, just a real quick point of clarification. I think in our original proposal and the draft of the report, we did suggest that CAISO implement, but then I think based on feedback we received, we in the final report said, you know, CPUC should just implement this. And I think it's not a big deal because, you know, we can discuss sort of all the possibilities. I just wanted to clarify that. But, you know, we recognize it's not something that the CAISO could do probably at least anytime soon, and would take a pretty big stakeholder process to change things to that point. So I think sort of short to medium term, it's, you know, definitely CPUC, but we're still sort of interested in having this be a role the CAISO takes on, you know, maybe down the line, and, you know, ideally once once there's sort of comfort with the method, if changes need to be made, iron out any wrinkles, before we sort of try to to send it over their way.
Thanks, Eric. Luke, you have a comment? Or you did?
Yeah, no, I do. Thank you. Thanks for these initial thoughts. I appreciate that. A few questions and points. First of all, have you all spoken with the ISO folks to see if there's any, at least conceptual interest to manage this process at some point? Eric, you want to weigh in? Sorry, Oliver, David, I'm calling on him.
I forget where the status of those conversations are. I think it's sort of far enough down the road. Our interest is to, get something going and prove it out. And if we can prove it out and make it work and sort of seems to be working for the market and participants and everything, we'll start moving in that direction. So I think the short answer is no, or at least not for a while. But we may have had some of those conversations a while back.
Eric Leiter, quick.
Yeah, this is Eric from the CAISO. Yeah, I think Eric Lyon summarized it correctly, that, it's been a while since that initial proposal, since we had those conversations, and obviously there, isn't anything kind of like this that the CAISO currently does, and would be a very big kind of process lift and need to go through all the hoops of approval. And has all the host of challenges that you all summarized. So I just wanted to chime in and say, I think Eric Lyon summarized it correctly, that we're going to continue working with everyone in this process, but it wouldn't be correct to say we have an interest in taking this on in the near term.
Got it. Thank you for that. I mean, I think one of my concerns is whether or not the ISO has jurisdiction to assess, to get involved in the capacity space. I'm not saying, I'm not taking a position on that one way or the other at this point, but just something to think about, And then moving on to a few other points. One is that, one thing we're going to have to think about is, the other point I want to address is, or the second point is that I think there might be precedent for the PUC requiring certain contract provisions in RA contracts, or it might be like for RPS contracts or something like that. So I don't recall the details. I'm just trying to, dig back into my memory, but I think there is precedent for that, for doing it that way. And so that would support, I think, what you all were kind of putting out there, and for third-party DR providers. And then something else that we're going to need to talk about is what the proxy capacity value is going to be for the utilities, because of course they're not going to be, there's no counterparty to their DR capacity that they're going to be providing, and so we have to think of some sort of proxy. I mean, I suppose probably the 88, capacity penalty that the RA penalty that the PUC has now in effect might be a good starting point for discussion, and just to kind of maintain consistency and transparency. But obviously, I invite other folks to weigh in. They may have other thoughts as well. Thank you.
Josh, do you have a comment?
Yeah, just a high level thought. So if I'm hearing you correctly, you guys are looking for feedback on the penalty enforcement mechanism, and the proposal is essentially that CPUC would quote unquote enforce it, but really the enforcement is happening in the contracts between the load serving entities and the demand response providers. Is that accurate summary?
Yeah, that they would pass on that. Yes.
Well, I think that might be a little, I think that's what Luke was suggesting, which is maybe slightly different than what, like we were saying, just apply it to the LSC and they'll have an incentive to put that into their contract with their providers. Versus I think what Luke was saying is actually the CPUC does have, there is some precedent for the CPUC requiring this in the contract.
Not
Yeah,
requiring this, but requiring a specific contract provision. I'm forgetting what it was and, you know, the context and all that sort of thing, but I think there is, yeah, I'm seeing from Patrick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So can I ask one additional question? When I think about penalty enforcement mechanism, I have two parts there. Like one of them is who calculates what the performance factor is. You know, we can sort that out at some point, right? And then and what the overall value will be. And then the other question is how does it get enforced? But both of those, to me, like those pieces are part of enforcement. When we talk about the comments that you guys want, do you just want the comments on the second half, or do you also want comments in terms of who says here's the who determines what the performance is by a particular entity? Who calculates, you know, if I were to take my proposal, pan and bam, and the performance factor, or vice versa, if you look at BNLI, who does the calculation? Is that part of the feedback you guys want?
I think that's definitely part of the feedback we're interested in, particularly if that entity is anyone other than the CPUC. I think they're the sort of obvious choice, but if there's another way that could work, we're open to that.
Perhaps also, I know this is mentioned. It's maybe not directly the enforcement mechanism, but it is mentioned in the report that we had proposed that the CPUC would sort of streamline the approval of those capacity requests. So for the capability profiles or the time temperature matrices, I know that I forget the exact numbers now, but it was something along the lines of like if a DRP or had met the 90% or had performed in previous years to a certain threshold, and we're not asking for an increase beyond like 25%, or again, the numbers are escaping me, the specifics, but there was already a role for the CPUC to be approving capacity requests, which may be relevant to this, as a sort of who's
Yeah,
going to be doing the calculation as well.
Yeah, and if I remember down, but that was in the front end, right? Who's approving the capability profile, or is this in the
Right.
back end? But you're
Right.
basically you already have an entity kind of discussed as part of that.
Right. I guess I'm just saying in terms of the front end of, 1 year is using the back end of a previous year. So like if the CPUC is already going to be doing that on the, they're going to be comparing it to, like, in order to have an assessment of like whether a, a DRP is submitting, 25% more. Anyway, maybe not relevant, but just to say that the sort of the obvious agency that we had identified was the CPUC for that. So maybe if it was, yeah, as Eric had said, sort of deviating from them calculating, doing the calculations on this, maybe that would be worth mentioning in the comments for this element.
Eric, Leon, was there something specific? You still have your hand raised, so.
Yeah, thank you. So the question of sort of like a proxy capacity price for the utilities raised an interesting idea for me, and this is maybe an idea that could kill two birds with one stone. But I wonder if we could, set that proxy capacity price for the utilities and allow that to serve as sort of like a default penalty level for third-party DRPs and those participating with third-party CCA contracts, because a problem in the back of my mind for a while is again, how do we know the capacity prices associated with these contracts? And I think what a default value would do is say, like, look, here's what the penalty per megawatt hour is going to be. But if you are competing on price, you're able to put your DR product into the market at a lower price, we could say that's fine. You just have to share your sort of contract value with us, or your LSE weighted contract value, or whatever it is, and that will allow you to effectively take a slightly less steep penalty. I'm really thinking out loud here, so I'll try to write this up, and if that's not making sense, but that's the idea.
Just an open question here, which is, Vika in their comments raised a really interesting point, which is we need to think about how all this is going to apply under a slice a day. And under a slice a day, if I'm at LSE, I wouldn't necessarily pay the same amount if you delivered a resource for 4 hours that delivers more at 4 o'clock and declines by the time you get to 7, 8 p.m. And I would pay more for a resource. This is myself, pretending I'm an LSE. If he gave me a resource that would deliver more during the really critical hours, which were really like that 7 to 9 period. So the question of whether or not you have a standard capacity price assumes that you're not valuing different hours differently. Whereas I think under a slice a day, you actually are likely to see different folks value different hours differently based on the scarcity of the resources in those hours. So I'm not sure to what extent it makes sense to have like a proxy capacity price throughout. And again, it raises the whole complexity. How does this work under a slice a day? And I believe it was Klika that raised that as a key issue that we needed to make sure we covered. It's easy to make examples without really talking about that. But at some point, we actually need to have that discussion to say, how does this work under a slice a day? It complicates things a bit.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think as a sensible default for the purposes of applying the penalty, and I believe this is what is in the final report, but I could go double check, is just taking a straight average over the course of the hours that you are required to show. I think that's maybe not a perfect solution. There are probably some hours that matter a bit more than others, but I think it's a reasonable one. Yeah.
Gil, well,
Division has any thoughts on this? Would they be interested in doing the assessment for capacity shortfall? Yeah, I'm just curious.
who are you asking if they would be?
Anyone from Energy Division who is working on RA or DR?
Yeah. Would we be doing the calculations? I think that's the question.
Yeah.
I think the responsibility, I think that is the responsibility. Yes, for the calculation would be within the Energy Division. That would be, I believe, the expectation for this. Yeah, and I seen the comment you mentioned something about weather normalized. I'm curious because I know we have a time temperature matrix from the one proposal, and then we have the I can't remember. I'm sorry, Eric. I can't remember what you call it.
Capability profile.
Capability profile that is specifically capability or kind of a capacity versus time representation. Right. So that I'm not sure. I don't know if there's any weather normalization that would need to be taking place per se.
Let me see if I can help. Is this this is in response to your comment in the chat about not as simple as comparing ex post delivery against it because it's not weather normalized?
That is the challenge I was thinking about. Yeah, just want to make sure we are comparing apples with apples.
Yeah, so I think both the PAM and BAM proposal and the BNLI regression proposal do include weather normalization. They do it a little bit differently. but you know, whether it's a time temperature matrix or you know, a regression or a no, I'm forgetting what it's called, capability profile. Sorry, that those are both a function of temperature, and so you know to identify the capacity values within those. In both cases, you plug in your sort of worst day planning temperature assumptions into the profile or the matrix, and it comes up with sort of expected capacity prices for those. And so you do that on the back end too, right? Well, it works a little differently for bid and performance alignment. But for the regression approach, you run the regression and then you plug the planning temperature back into that. So I think they both are weather normalized, just in slightly different ways. And real quickly, I'll respond to Lisa's question from PG&E. The final report is the, let's see, it was called the Qualifying Capacity of Supply Side Demand Response Working Group Final Report that was published at the beginning of this year and submitted into the CPUC docket at some point, into the RA docket, I believe. Oh yeah, thanks Daniel for sharing that in the chat.
I think that's the CEC docket, but it is also there, I believe.
Yeah. That's the output from the sort of last chapter of this working group.
Colin?
And this is Colin Smith from LEAP. I just had a clarification question on the penalty enforcement mechanism and the need to have access to information on contract prices. Why wouldn't it be possible just to use the penalty to adjust performance and then just calculate a new payment based on that performance? So if we're saying that 50% performance gets compensated at $0, then just adjust the performance so that if a DRP performs at 50%, it's like it's performing at 0%, and then it just gets paid nothing.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. That is something that would keep PUC from sort of having to reach into those contracts and figure it out. We'd have to do something more like, you know, I think what Patrick Cunningham put in the chat, we'd have to make sure that we require those, require that in the contract. So I'd say that's definitely a viable pathway. And curious, you know, we'll be looking forward to reading comments on which of these pathways is the most viable and makes the most sense.
Do we have any other questions on the penalty enforcement? Thank you. Questions or comments? Okay, well, you know, instead of taking a 5-minute break, we can just wrap up. I can give you next steps, and then I can give everybody back the rest of the afternoon. So written proposals and comments are due on October 13th. That is next week on Friday. Again, send them to myself, Daniel, to Eric, and if the next should address concerns raised in this presentation. As we mentioned, feasibility, roadblocks, issues, proposed PEMs. We are really interested to hear what you have to say specifically on this, because it is a interesting and not quite as well extended area at this point. And then the format of the next meeting, which is October 19th, will give you a chance to present your own mechanism adjustments, or if you have particular comments or concerns or other things that you wish to present. This will be your opportunity to kind of present to the group, 10 minutes present, 5 minutes of Q&A as we normally have. You get the presentation due to us by October 17th, and it will be shared at the October 19th meeting. If you don't plan on doing a presentation, but you do want a chance to speak, you can also do that, just let us know as well. Other than that, is there any other questions or comments or anything that Eric or Daniel wish to add before we end this working group meeting?
Nothing for me.
No, okay.
See a hand from Colin.
Colin, yes, I call him.
Hey, just since we have a bit of extra time, wanted to ask what the I guess process was for, or if there was a process to go back and address other parts of the other topics that had been addressed in this working group. It didn't come off to me earlier that questions around, for example, the BNLI were totally settled. So correct me if that's not true. And just sort of what is the process by which decisions will be made or determinations will be made around elements we've already discussed.
So, the way I see, so we will be putting together kind of a comprehensive plan and process for testing, and with our with the suggestions and that came from these discussions. Although we have not discussed it internally, I could see us having another meeting to talk about that and then have comments. I don't foresee us really being able to wrap. If we could wrap it up not the next meeting, but the meeting after that might be a possibility. But the idea is for us to produce something for you guys to see about how we're going to move forward and what we're suggesting on. I will say, like for the BNLI, like you mentioned, we have decided we're going to, in the testing period, look at the CEC proposal and the DSA proposal. With the data we get, and so there may be some there will be some more detail on how we're going to go about that, which could include some requests from the participants, because we will need things possibly time temperature matrices and things like that to conduct it. And then, as mentioned today, the CSP, we plan on, we'll be getting the data, and we will be able to, with a tool that and other items at our disposal, to test and look at various parameters on that. And so we will probably, I can foresee us having at least another meeting to discuss the plan and to give you a chance to do comments as well.
I would add on to that, if you have comments on any of those previously discussed, we're happy to receive them. I mean, we're available via email and maybe sort of less formal channels as well. I think it will probably be useful for us to have some single source of truth on this. You are correct that I don't think we did come to a conclusion on the BNLI. We presented our determination, our preliminary determination, and I think we'll have sort of some adjustments in a more comprehensive report. But and I know that Josh as well had commented that he would like to adjust some of the content in his proposal based off of the discussions that we've been having. And I see he has his hand up too, so maybe he can speak to that as well. But
no, I was going to make that point as well. It's like, Colin, if you want to talk, I'm happy to talk about any adjustments you think need to happen to the proposal I put together. I already heard from, several folks about little tweaks need to happen here and there just to improve it. It got put together pretty quickly, and I think it's going to be iterated upon. So if you want to chat, and you have any suggestions for improvements, perfectly fine. But right now, the thought process is that we're going to probably make some final tweaks to both of those, and probably be testing both of those side by side.
Right.
Both the CC proposal and the proposals we put together.
And Josh, you can expect us, we'll probably be reaching out to you as well to sort of, again, have this all kind of come together in a single document, sort of just to capture what it is that we're planning to go into this testing period with. But exactly, I think on the same page there.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. I don't see any other hands raised. It's 4:12, so we can call it a day. I don't know if you're going to call it a day at your work, but we're going to call it a meeting, and we look forward to receiving your comments. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.